Like how did this come about? Because I'd love to know a little bit about the history about, because we went from butter and then it was villainized of everybody saying it's evil, and everybody started switching to, to margarine and all these vegetable oils. How did this happen in the first place?
Well, it happened truly because the American Heart Association decided that, of course, their mission. So this was the American. Let's talk about the American Heart Association. So they are today actually the biggest and most important medical organization when it comes to leading global thought around diet, specifically
Wow.
fats. So they matter. They matter. Like you might think, oh, I don't go to the American Heart Association for any kind of advice, but your doctor does, all nurses, dietitians, everyone is trained based on their ideology. And, most of our food supply has been altered because of this ideology. So it matters, right? So the history, let's talk about the history real quick. So at first, when it was founded in the 19 teens or early 1920s, somewhere around there, it was just a small collection of doctors really interested in diseases of the heart. And at that point in time, the dominant diseases of the heart were infectious diseases, from strep throat, which can, infect the heart valves, and deficiency diseases and stuff like that. And the heart attacks were actually pretty darn rare when it was first founded. And so, however, by the 1940s, heart attacks had really dramatically skyrocketed. And nobody knew quite why, like even the heart specialists, but the heart attacks were killing people. They were especially killing men in what they called the prime of their life. That was the way they talked back then, always somewhat poetic. And, in their 40s and 50s, people were just keeling over dead from heart attacks. And, nobody knew what they were. Nobody knew what happened. There was very little known about how to treat them properly. Finally, President Eisenhower had a heart attack. Now, he was a beloved president, and suddenly, this was after World War II. Suddenly, this man who was leading America through its post-war celebratory boom was non-communicado for 6 weeks. This was the treatment back in the day. Lie down in bed, don't move, don't get up out of bed. It's a great way to get a blood clot, but we didn't know that then. He couldn't even have people from his cabinet come in, because they were worried about raising his blood pressure, getting him upset. So the whole, the word heart attack actually wasn't around yet. They called it a coronary because that's the medical word for the arteries that feed the heart. And so the coronary, the idea of this coronary was just terrifying. And the American Heart Association, they took it upon themselves to try to do some research on this. Now, then something happened. So all was well and good, right? And then something happened. Something had happened just a few years earlier. The American Heart Association, just before President Eisenhower's heart attack, had voted to start accepting money from industry. And it was a big fight. It was a vicious fight among these group of doctors specializing in heart disease. There was one group that was like, bigger is better. We just want more money. We can educate people. It'll be great. And then there was this other group that was conservative and smartly thinking, well, if we accept money from industry, we might start making unfounded claims. We might be, pressed to make unfounded claims about the cause of heart attack. Those words are in their minutes. And of course, the good guys lost, the greedy guys won. Money talks. It always has. It always will. And so they ended up making that, winning, and didn't take long before they accepted money from Procter and Gamble, who made cottonseed oil and corn oil at the time. And what do you know? Just a few years after that, they had this book ready, a cookbook, a diet book, that became a blockbuster, million copy bestseller. And what did they recommend in that book? Cut back on butter, just choose lean meat, have whole grains, plenty of vegetables, and vegetable oil. Don't use any of those animal fats because they're saturated fats, and saturated fats are a problem, we say. And the vegetable oils are going to prevent heart attacks because they're polyunsaturated, and that makes them liquid. Like the whole thought process and supposed science here was just based on the simple observation that butter is solid on the counter and oil is not. And literally, this is how dumb the thinking was at the time. And Ansel Keys was the leader in this dumb idea. He championed it like nobody's business. Yeah, butter and solid animal fats will literally, he said, clog your arteries like grease, hot grease in a cold pipe under the sink, the kitchen sink. That is a complete lie. And he only said it because I think he really didn't know anything about how our bodies actually transport fat, which is in lipoproteins. And so shortly after that, he changed his tune. He started to say, oh, wait, no, that doesn't, I never, like, he kind of like never said that again. And then he started saying something else. Saturated fat raises cholesterol. And then cholesterol, now that's the problem. And they keep shifting that, like the American Heart Association keeps shifting. What is the problem? So here we are 70 years later, they're still saying cholesterol, but now they're not just saying total cholesterol, which is what they used to say. For a while, they said bad cholesterol, the LDL cholesterol is bad cholesterol. Now they still use that term, but now they're focusing on small, dense LDL. They keep changing the story. The American Heart Association is bad.
Yeah, it is constantly changing. I mean, it's fascinating, Dr. K. I mean, this is absolutely fascinating. One of the things I think when I think about the American Heart Association and the people that I think about, the physicians I know who are leading the charge over there over the last 20 years, I think when I look at those men in particular that I'm thinking about, they all look, they have this sort of pale look and they look weak and feeble to me. I'm not trying to say anything or be mean. I'm just saying there's something, there's a principle in the Bible that Jesus says, and it's by their fruit you will recognize them. And I think this principle is really true with a lot of things. Like, how do you know who to listen to in health? How do you know who to listen to is, who are the healthiest people? What are they doing? Well, let's try and do what they do. And as we study civilizations and cultures and everything else. And so I don't, the American Heart Association, and the people leading it, I think that they're, as you've said, they've constantly had to change their tune over and over again because I think the people that I see that have the greatest level of wisdom, they combine science today with common sense or principles that have been around since the beginning of time and relying on some of that information versus I think some people in the medical field almost have a godlike complex of, well, I'm coming up with something new. I'm coming up with this all on my own. And so anyways, but would you walk us through, because we were talking about vegetable oils and seed oils. Can you walk us through how these are created? Because obviously we think vegetables tend to be pretty healthy. Certain nuts and seeds tend to be pretty healthy. How do we take these things that were maybe good and turn them into something that can be so bad?
Right, like that's exactly the key point. Like, so, because when you said, what people have been doing, well, people have been eating vegetables. So how could vegetable oil be bad? Well, these oils have nothing to do with vegetables. Also, like the other term people have used, and maybe you've used, Josh, I don't know, or had people talking about vegetable seed oils.
Yeah.
Because those are really the problems, right? It's not, the oils that I'm talking about are soy, corn, actually, I'll do them in the order I usually do them. There's 8. I call them the hateful 8. So it's corn, canola, cottonseed, soy, sunflower, safflower, rice bran, and grapeseed. So those are seeds mostly. Soybeans have been used for thousands of years, but not soy oil, right? Sunflower has been used for thousands of years, but not the industrial process of creating sunflower oil. And so it's really the detail that is the difference is these seeds are treated in an industrial, they're treated like badly. They're treated like, they're mined, really, literally. Like their chemicals are mined, right? I mean, MIN, like what you do mining in the ground.
Yeah.
Right? And so like soy, is mined for both its protein content, which is often fed to humans and animals in animal feed, but also, the fake protein. The fake meat kind of products that's sold to vegans and vegetarians who don't know any better. That this is not a healthy soy protein. So they mine it for that, but the original reason we started eating soy oil came from America. Soy oil was never really produced in Asia, where soybeans came from. It came from America, again, after World War II. A lot of things changed after World War II. When the farmers had to fatten their cows real quick to get them to satisfy the American hunger for beef that had been, we hadn't had beef for the World War II. We were told, all the good stuff had to go to the soldiers for the war effort, So Americans wanted beef. And before that, there was the Great Depression, where a lot of people were just plain old starving, and beef was really expensive. So people just had this pent up need for it. And to make it all happen faster, again, somewhat good intentions here, but we are deviating from nature and what people did for thousands of years. Instead of having the cows just fatten themselves up normally on grass, which takes a lot longer, they sped up the process by feeding them corn and soy meal. So they mined that protein out of the soybean, and they mined the starch out of the corn and combined the two to create cow feed. And on the other end of the spectrum, what they do with the oil, well, they fed that to humans.
Walk me through the process, because I want people to understand this. So when we talk about vegetable oils, there are, or I guess these are more fruits or one-seeded drupes, but we think about olives, we think about avocado, we think about coconut, and those are oils that are something that I recommend frequently. You might as well. So especially extra virgin olive oil and organic coconut oil. But compare how those are processed today versus how the seed oils today, you're talking about the soybean oil, the cottonseed oil, how are those processed today?
Very differently. So, the healthy oils are virgin oils. They're called like olive oil. It's called virgin oil. And you can make they don't call peanut oil virgin, but peanuts are so oily that you can use simple, gentle techniques to squeeze out an oil that is akin to olive oil. The first press is very healthy, full of vitamins, even has some minerals, got lots of antioxidants there. And those antioxidants are key. And we're going to be returning to the theme of antioxidants in an oil and antioxidants being stripped out and oxidation. But so that's what healthy oil is made. It's just gentle pressing usually from a food or a fruit that has been cultivated specifically for the purpose of oil for a long time. Even sesame, right? Sesame oil, little tiny seeds. Sesame oil is really for the wealthy because it was so delicious, and so minute little seeds took a lot of money and a lot of time to get the oil out of that. But that has thousands of years of cultivation too. So that you can produce a healthy virgin oil. So it's the oils that have been bred for a long time to specifically produce oil, or even like nuts that are just very oily, or like avocado, it's a very oily fruit. So with pretty gentle processes these days, you get a kind of a virgin equivalent oil there that's full of good stuff, has not been treated badly. On the other hand, the Hateful Eight, no gentle, sweet, kind treatment here. They are abused, from the minute that they're taken from the field, because they don't have to treat even the seeds gently. They can store them for a little too long. They can let mold start to grow. They can use some off seeds, because they know that the factory process is really, we're not looking for nature created oil. We're mining it here. We're using high technology in a factory to extract out something that's sort of like oil, and then with intensive refining, make it edible. So let me break that down, because that factory stuff is really disgusting. So what happens is, let's say we're talking about, any of the Hateful Eight soy oil. In order to produce enough oil at scale, they use extreme heat and pressure. Often they use a solvent, if they want to call it organic, they can't use a solvent. But getting organic soy oil does not solve the problem here. So whether they use a solvent or not, what they call the crude oil initially extracted from soybeans with the heat, pressure, and so on in this industrial process, that crude oil contains all kinds of what the industry calls impurities. But when I asked, so for the book, I interviewed people. I asked, what's in these impurities exactly, and why do you call it inedible? Because the crude oil is considered inedible. And they told me there's toxins in there. That's why it's inedible. There's all kinds of toxins, a brew of them, plus things that make it taste disgusting. Some of the toxins are acrid, meaning like they'll irritate your eyes. If you were to swallow the crude oil, those irritants will burn on the way down. And when the crude oil hits your stomach, you'll throw it back up. So it's literally inedible. Like you couldn't eat it if you tried. That's crude oil. Now, that's not what ends up in the bottles. What ends up in the bottles is not inedible. It's edible, but it still has toxins in it, right? So the refining makes it less toxic. So the problem is the extraction step, because it's just pounding it with pressure and heat and often solvents and extreme temperatures, and it just creates a mess. Basically, just imagine throwing a bunch of soybeans into the oven, baking them for an hour at 600 degrees, and then squeezing them under like some sort of a vice. And what would drip out of there would just be goopy, gluey, disgusting, foul smelling. And that's the crude oil. That's the problem. The refining, the factory where the guys, the chemists, the food chemists, that you need to consult with many food chemists to know all the steps to run the factory refining properly. It's a very intensive process. That actually makes it less toxic. That's the thing that makes it edible, but it can't make it fully non-toxic. That's the problem. There's nothing else in the food supply that enters the food chain containing significant amounts of serious toxins.
Hey, if you liked this, then watch my full episode right here.